120 seconds. 110 seconds. 100 seconds. 90 seconds. 80 seconds. 70 seconds. 60 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
My name's State McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, State McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This Morning Talk champion in Studio 1A. None other than the one and only Jonathan Small. Morning.
Good morning, Stan. How
Good
are
afternoon,
you
good
doing?
evening, wherever,
Well, it's
whatever
good
time
morning.
it is, right?
Well, it's good morning here. Some parts of the country is good. I guess good morning too. I guess
Still good morning.
Still good morning.
Right.
Some parts of the world now, like in Europe, probably good afternoon. You know, we've had guests from England, so I'm pretty sure they're 5 hours ahead, or 4 hours, or 5 hours ahead. Might still technically be morning, but it's close to afternoon as well, and everything. So you had a busy weekend?
Very busy weekend. Very busy weekend, very busy week. The weeks have been blurring. They're just blur. It's like one big blur. One big blur. So, yeah. How was your weekend?
The weekend was fine. I mean, there was a couple disturbing incidents, obviously, but you're trying to take the good with the bad. You know, it seems like you're more enjoying yourself at the airport working, and then sometimes you enjoy yourself. You're just running out of time. You're trying to do a lot of things to get yourself organized, and when you're having a good time, the time is running by fast. Trying to get things done, sort of like you, but in a different way. But trying to stay focused, that's the main thing.
Absolutely.
And trying to enjoy the summertime too.
Summertime.
You know,
Mortensen Plaza, the Taste of the Caribbean Jerk Festival.
I heard about that. You know, the thing about Hartford and the greater Hartford area, you got so many Caribbean restaurants. It's like you can pick and choose.
That's true.
You know, you're not like, this is a place where you don't have a good selection. But there's an excellent Caribbean restaurant up by Bradley and in Rocky Hill. You got to check it out. But I guess this one was nice too. Did you go?
This was great because it was downtown. It was right on the waterfront. A nice, beautiful day. It was breezy out. They had a little mini parade. Great entertainment. Good friends. Good neighbors. It was really, really nice.
Well, I would say the camaraderie sounds like, I mean, I don't know what the food tastes like. I would assume the food tasted pretty nice.
I didn't eat anything.
You didn't eat it? Oh, so you just went for the camaraderie, just to be out?
I just went to be out because, every year I go to the Jerk Festival and I'm behind the camera. I'm wind up, because I'm usually taping it. We usually do Chat It Up with Jesse from the Jerk Festival, or we do it as a W4 News. But this year, I was able to just go sit down, up on the lawn, like the little grassy knoll type thing that they got going on. And so it was really, really nice. Really nice. All kinds of people are there. You get to talk to folks. It's a lot of fun.
Well, this is a little bit different than the Taste of Hartford, isn't it? It's not quite the same, the separate event.
It's a separate event from the Taste of Hartford. However, if you went to the Taste of Hartford up on Constitution Plaza, I'm sure a lot of the, some of the vendors that were at the Jerk Fest were probably also at the Taste of Hartford. But there were many, many more there. And the music everything was focused strictly on the Caribbean.
Well, this is Caribbean Week, actually. The parade is next week.
This Saturday.
This Saturday.
Yeah.
Right.
Saturday.
You kind of like it at the Bushnell? I mean, we're kind of used to this now.
And it was up to me. The parade would go from into the community.
Oh.
It was up to Stan. The parade would go back to the way it used to be, bringing vitality and opportunities for Hartford people through the neighborhood. So it would go down North Main Street to the West Indian Social Club.
So you prefer the old way.
I prefer the old way.
But you're satisfied still the new way.
Right.
That's the best way.
Right. Or my compromise would be to have it start at the West Indian Club and come through the community.
And then end up at the Bushnell Park.
Yes. That would be a compromise.
A compromise,
yeah. But I really thought that there was a really greatness to it coming through North Main Street.
Well, probably need to check out the other parts of the country where they have Caribbean, like Atlanta, Miami. Toronto has a huge one. I guess New York is the biggest in the country, probably the biggest in the world parade. But check out, I think we're probably the only city, I'm not sure, that made it change the operation of the route. But if you check out the other places, I was just kind of curious to see if they do it the same way. I don't think they ended it downtown in other places like Brooklyn, Toronto. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
You don't know.
But we're not other places.
No.
We're Hartford. So, let other places come and check out how we do stuff. We don't always have to be running around everyone else to see how they do it.
Well, the one I hear in Toronto is just state of the art. I mean, it's a huge event. And then New York is just a bigger city.
Well, that's true. But that's event organizers. But we can talk about that ad nauseum later on.
Later on.
It's Monday, y'all, which means what? We have a special guest joining us because it's Special Guest Monday. And Jonathan always finds great people from somewhere around the world. So, Mr. Small, you have the floor.
Well, good morning to people out there on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. We have a guest this morning who has a background technically in the music industry. He has a serious story about his daughter that he would like to express as well. Honestly, just met this person, so I'm going to be a little bit of a challenge to pick up on this particular subject matter, but I'm going to try to do the best I can. The guest this morning is no other than Mr. James Kennedy, aka Hickball of ExCepto DiNeRO, if I'm saying it correctly again. Good morning, James. How are you doing?
How are you? Yes, ExCepto DiNeRO.
Okay. I'm doing fine, and I guess like Robert De Niro, something like that level.
Something like that.
Something like that. James, could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and background before we get into our main topics of discussion?
Well, first and foremost, I am a dedicated father, 8 children, one of which we're discussing today. And this subject matter, as you spoke of, it is something that I think is very important for children of color going forward. It is dealing with how we go to the hospital and they have like this wide open door to call in officials for just anything that they want to. It doesn't even have to be anything wrong, in my opinion. So this is what I would like to share and also give a heads up to other parents as to what this could do to our children in the future, pretty much. I am a musical artist, producer, and that's very secondary because of my daughter's condition now. So what I'm looking to do is use this time right here to express some of what happened. I can't go very deep because it is in litigation, but I can skim the surface as to warn other parents, like I said, as to going in the hospital and having someone to possibly advocate for them, if you will.
Well, James, first of all, let's let people know exactly a little bit about your daughter's health condition, the reason why you admitted her to the hospital, and let's use this as a starting point towards this subject matter, first of all.
And that's very, very deep. That was something, I'll just give a short story. She was teething at about 9 months. We gave her some Tylenol, and that's when everything happened. So we took her to the hospital that was nearest to us, and they didn't have the proper medication. So one of the EMTs referred us to a hospital in Delaware, a children's hospital, and that's where we took her. And they diagnosed her with epilepsy, which changed in diagnosis once I eventually got her to CHOP after the adjudication and all the court things that happened surrounding my daughter for no apparent reason. So yeah, that's what they said. So the diagnosis keeps changing, and that's what we're dealing with.
Well, James, if you're dealing with a misdiagnosed case, and do you classify that on a medical, legal level as malpractice, or is it some other form of an issue when you're misdiagnosed patient, like your daughter in this case?
Well, yes, I do. But at the same time, there's so much more here that I would love to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was of a very weird nature, to say the least. Being approached by a doctor with his hands in his pockets and approaching me about other female doctors and the attire that they're wearing. So it was very weird prior to, and I was leading up to getting a transfer maybe on day 2 or day 3 in the hospital for her, and that was blocked by the team that was in place at the time.
Mm-hmm. So again, over the course of time that your daughter was in the hospital, some of her medical issues had changed. I guess you mentioned off of the air, she's under a lot of different prescription medications, and her health is not quite the same. I mean, she hasn't really been treated properly. So could you kind of elaborate a little bit on the conditions that your daughter has gone through from the time she was first admitted to the Delaware Children's Hospital towards where her current health status is today?
Yes, it's very weird. It's like a roller coaster. My daughter was walking, she was talking prior to going into the hospital originally, and she was placed into a medically induced coma. And one of the doctors spoke to me about the phenobarbital medication, which is an old, dirty medication, that if it was used, the seizures would come back. And they did. But so much more happened in the process to funnel my daughter's care in such a way that she would pretty much become the bottom line, if you know what I mean, for a lifetime. So I think that is something that should be politically addressed. I think it's something that should be absolutely addressed by parents and the safety of their children. But in relation to your original question about my daughter, her condition today, she's still not walking, she's still not talking. She requires 24-hour care. I mean, any time of the night or day it can happen. Now, she's getting somewhat better because when I finally got her transferred to CHOP, what happened was the medication, the doctor there, the neurologist, started to remove the medication. And when that happened, she started getting better. But the hospital, the Children's Hospital in Delaware, they sent her back to us on 18 different prescriptions at 2 years old. So that's weird in itself. Now, today, I'm hoping that she'll walk. I'm hoping that she'll talk. But there's been so much damage. She was having an upper area of 80 to 100 seizures per day on the medication. right? And now she's having maybe 1 or 2 a day. So it's a big difference. And I think that's something that we should focus on. It should be a focal point of care, especially seizure care, because there's a lot of people diagnosed with epilepsy, and there's a lot of children also diagnosed with epilepsy. So I think that's very important going forward, and we're hoping for the best for my daughter.
Well, James, again, you're still putting the blame on the Delaware Children's Hospital of misdiagnosed your daughter, and then also prescribing her different levels of medication. So are you saying that the hospital is at fault for her condition getting worse? There's no evidence from what the doctors in the hospital is saying that her condition is beyond what they are responsible for? I know you can't get into all of the legal terms of the case, but kind of just let people know exactly where you're coming from when you're faulting the Delaware Children's Hospital for your daughter's conditions getting worse over this period of time.
Well, we found that there is so much legal discrepancy as to the documentation. They held her medical records. Every medical facility from the point of her being returned to us said that they couldn't get her medical records. They wouldn't give them to them. So it took for us to get into a legal situation to get the medical records, which is so many discrepancies there that it's unreal, that they are actually practicing those in those ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, and also they removed custody. They filed a false report against not only me as a parent, but there's other cases in which they have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. So this is a pattern in which we need to correct, because we need hospitals. Our children need hospitals. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This is something that I had to speak about. I had to.
Okay, so again, there's been other cases of other parents having their children, I guess, health issues become worse towards the way this hospital has treated the patients. So there's other lawsuits beyond just your lawsuit. And do you feel it's a race issue? It's a class issue? It's just...
Absolutely.
It is? You okay? Yeah.
Absolutely racial. Mm-hmm. Like one of the main things, there were no people of color present at the meeting in which they decide to remove custody. And that was very interesting. And also, she was a neurology patient there originally, and they did not invite neurology because neurology was where I was getting the medicine, and that's what they used to say I wasn't getting the medicine or caring for my daughter, and that's why she was in the hospital in the first place. So it was very, very, very botchy and very, it was wrong-headed. Mm. Yeah.
Stan, this is a new topic. Obviously, I don't know if you have any questions or any added commentaries you want to add to James Kennedy on this subject matter, or anything else related to this.
It's very interesting, and anyone that has, small kids, such as myself, well, they're pre-teens. But anyone that has children and you're a parent finds this story to be very gripping. So I'm just soaking up the details. Within the last week, I've been to the hospital twice, but my daughter is found out she's very, very allergic to cashews.
Oh,
So
okay.
she had to go to the emergency room, EpiPen, whole 9 yards. So it's what happens if something goes wrong in the hospital. And hospital systems are like any other system. No one wants to take responsibility for something when it goes wrong, so they try to cover stuff up. I'm not suggesting that's what happened here, but it sounds like it could be a possibility.
That's what we're trying to find out.
Right, then. So I'm listening. I'm listening.
Okay. Well, James, again, I mean, can you talk about the status, any capacity of the legal levels, or are you in the beginning stages of this legal case? Are you in the middle? Are you towards the end? I mean, where's the current status level, if you can disclose that, towards your legal matter?
Well, that's very interesting, because I'm hoping that the attorney that I'm using can handle the case. So I would say we should be further. I'll put that out there. But I've found something very interesting in America, in the process of looking for an attorney when this happened to my daughter. I was reaching out to a lot of Delaware attorneys and just everywhere, and actually going through people, and it was almost like it was a blacklist or something, because the strange thing was most of the attorneys would be gung-ho at first, and then they would, I guess, check it out and call back and say, no, I don't think this is something that we want to deal with. That was confusing to me, because we're talking about justice and we're talking about children. I mean, seriously here, and I get it. Everyone has to pay their bills and go home at the end of the day, and no one wants to lose their job and start the domino effect that may possibly ensue. So that is what I think needs to be disrupted or remodeled, in some form or fashion in the healthcare system, because people need to have more compassion for children, especially.
So you didn't have any type of idea, anything about the track record of this hospital or this children's hospital before you had admitted your daughter to this? I guess you said that I guess it was a referral, that they had referred your daughter to go to this particular hospital, but you didn't.
So what happened was that the hospital nearest to us was, they just didn't have the medication for her age. She was 2 years old, or almost 2. She wasn't even 2. Matter of fact, I'm sorry, she was 9 months at that time when she first was admitted there, and they didn't have the proper medication. I believe it was Benpat, and that's when one of the EMTs of that hospital recommended the hospital in Delaware. So that's what we're, that was the only reference point that I had.
Now, are you in Delaware or are you in Pennsylvania?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
You're in Pennsylvania, okay. So is this a far commute to go to Delaware, or just like a short commute? Is it a border?
Maybe 25 minutes to a half an hour.
Okay.
You know, at tops 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So how are you monitoring your daughter's health now? Is she still affiliated at any level with this hospital, or have you taken her to another alternative hospital or children's hospital?
Oh, several. I'm in the process of getting a private doctor to compound what I'm using. I'm using a online service now, which they've sent me different methods in which to check her blood pressure and, you know, just keep her monitored. And doctors are on call 24 hours a day. So that's really, really working out. You know, technology is really helping in that way with her, because I can just kind of like reach out and they're right on it. You know, I don't want to disclose the name of the app, but yeah, it's working out very well for her.
Yes. Well, James, obviously I know your biggest concern is with your daughter and her health status level, but is there a bigger message or another message to your story that you kind of want people to know beyond just your daughter's story alone, related towards this matter level that you're going through, towards other claims that the Delaware Children's Memorial Hospital has had lawsuits filed against them?
Actually, it's not Memorial Hospital. It's a children's hospital there.
Okay.
But what I would want parents to take away would be just be watchful as well as knowledgeable as you possibly can. You know, because I believe that there is some doctors, not all doctors, that have a God complex that if you demonstrate care, then they are threatened by you demonstrating care for your loved ones, and they feel challenged in some form. And that's not what it should be about. It should be a working relationship, because we're talking about a person's health, you know, and especially a child, you know, with a whole lifespan of life expectancy, 72 years when I last checked. So I would say knowledge, you know, get as much knowledge about the cells, about the medications, about the side chains that they're using in the medications. You know, just know as much as you can know, because it's nothing to play with.
Well, you even hear today more than ever children that's going to school that they're so quick to put children on different types of drugs to control their behavior patterns. I know what you're talking about, and that could be a medical issue too if you really sit back and take a look at it.
Yeah.
But I guess the days when I was going to school, it was just very rare that you was under any form of medication. If you had any particular health problems, you would just go see the nurse. If it was something serious, then they would, you know, and I guess refer you to a hospital. But, you know, having so many kids today quickly to be put on different types of medications, maybe it's just the era that we're in, comparable to the past. But, you know, medications, you got to be extremely careful with it as well, and prescribing people all different types of medication. And I believe you said your daughter is under how many different medications at this current time, or in the past, that was alarming to you?
Oh, in the past, at 2 years old, she was actually returned to us with 18 different prescriptions. I believe maybe 12 or 13, maybe 14 was medications for a 2-year-old. You know, in my opinion, that could be like a chemical bomb, of some kind, because you're mixing so many medications that you have not tried. They're not tried and true together. You see what I'm saying? And at different dosage levels and, the adjustments and things. And the interesting thing about the medication for my daughter's situation was the Bicitra medication, in which I inquired about when she was in the hospital before everything happened. And that medication is to offset the acid. So some form of acidotic effect happens from the medication dealing with the liver, I would imagine. And that in itself was, I would imagine that the doctor perceived as a challenge, because I was tapping into why are you correcting a problem with this? And I really just wanted to know, because they were giving her sodium as well, quite a bit of sodium. And then the Bicitra, that had a strong sodium component, as well as the citric acid component, and whatever other medication or chemical that they had to use to bind the two. So I think that, that's part of what happened there with that medication, but that's too many medications for a child that's 2 years old. I mean, let's just be flatline with that. And what happened in the hospital that I cannot discuss. Oh man, I had to explain to the attorneys. It was weird. It was just weird. It was the weirdest thing. You know how you watch a movie and you see doctors and they're doing things that you would never imagine a doctor would do to a person.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me in there, because when you're asking for a transfer and they're telling you they're going to give you a transfer, and other doctors are saying, yes, in neurology, yes, let's allow him to get a second opinion for his daughter at another hospital. Why would you block that? And then keep my daughter for 3 months after I was removed from the hospital. So you forced treatment.
So you can disclose that you was removed from the hospital. You had no longer any legal authority to stay in the hospital. I mean, how did that? I mean, is that part of your lawsuit as well? If you can disclose that you was forcibly removed from this hospital that you didn't feel was justified.
Absolutely. Well, it's public record. The situation that it was a court situation in the first place. That was something that was false to start with, because I had to actually get my daughter back from the system. And they were trying to actually put a colostomy bag on my daughter. And she's eating today.
Right.
And eating everything in sight. Okay. So it's something that's alarming, and because think about it, they know what works I don't care if it's medical case law. I don't care if it's a mistake. I don't care if it's something that they tried as a doctor and that doctor specializes in that. They know much more than we would ever know when prescribing medications. And I think they should be held accountable for crossing up so many medications in children in such a way, because we don't know what it's doing to their brains going forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now your daughter is not under 18 prescription medications, I would assume. Obviously, that has been reduced, if that's correct.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And she's doing much better overall, would you say?
Much better. We're getting her therapy, and she's standing again, so that's a plus. But it's an uphill battle, you know, and economically it attacks the families of color, because it costs you so much more in time, and we all know that time is money.
Yeah.
You know, so a 24-hour care for a person, that kind of situation has been hectic on my family, you know, alone, especially having hope for her future and knowing that all we have is the now as to getting her in a good position to thrive and flourish, you know, become a responsible adult, you know.
Again, Stan, are you in the listening mood, or you have any questions or anything else you want to add to the guests?
It's, you know, it's I'm listening. It's, you know, as a parent, I think what happens lots of times is with all of the systems that are in place, and people blindly follow the system, that when you challenge something, you know, all of the system alarms go up, and it's like he said, you know, God complex drops in. It's like, well, where the system? Well, what do you know? I'm a doctor, you know, that kind of thing, you know. You know, well, I'm a parent. I'm a constituent, and I'm a customer.
Right.
And I brought my loved one in here for help.
Right.
You don't get to take over their life and dictate to me what I need to do. And I think, unfortunately, in some circumstances, these systems have gone beyond the control of the people who they serve. So you become almost like a victim, and, you know, and the systems, a victim at best, and an exploited resource for your money at worst. And you know, hospitals fighting over who's going to retain the patient because, you know, the money is related to the patient. The patient is a revenue stream.
Right.
It's like, you know, health care has stopped being health care, and it's to some degree the health industrial complex where we need people to make our money. And these, I think, are very, very, it's a very fine line when a parent is told you can't have a say in what's going on with your loved one, and that you don't know. And even if you don't know, the burden of explaining to a way that makes you understand is on the healthcare professional. But I don't think at any time you should be iced out of the loop. And I think, you know, these are systems, because these people have been known to be wrong,
right,
on many occasions. And the number one cause of death, if I'm not mistaken, is doctor. I'm just saying.
Well, that's why I asked up front about malpractice. I wanted to clarify the difference between, you know, the legal terminologies when you say you have an issue and you misdiagnose a patient and it's been proven that the doctor is at fault of the misdiagnosed case, and then the situation or the health condition gets worse, then automatically does every doctor is willing to take responsibility? If I guess that would say the answer would be no. I guess they would go to court and go through a legal process. So it's a real touchy subject matter. And again, I didn't want to really bring this up because maybe me and you, Stan, we could talk about this after, I guess is off of the air. But I did explain to James off of the air that situation here, and it's a totally different case with the 2-year-old boy falling out of the window. And then now you hear Pastor Sam Saylor saying the mother shouldn't be charged with a manslaughter. I still have a problem, though, with DCF going to the house twice. And I don't know if they found any evidence that the house was unfit. They did the last time. And again, I don't want to take too much away from James because he's here for a limited amount of time. But I guess you got to be careful on all levels, from the hospitals to DCF to your school systems to property management who own this building. There's a lot of burdens you got to be on top of running a family and children, So again, James, I don't want to bring you too much into something that you're not aware of. Kind of running towards. I mean, we can go a little bit longer, but your music background, quickly, what type of role has your music background played in this type of case that you're going through with your daughter?
Oh, it saved my life. I gotta say, music saved lives. Mm-hmm. Because it's an outlet. Mm-hmm. Because I felt so much pressure, so much disappointment, because that can affect you as a father mentally. Mm-hmm. I couldn't protect my baby, and then they actually did things to her, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Now, like I said, that's to be proven, but I think it's a clear and concise situation, in my opinion, because you don't hide things if you are, above board and willing to bring everything to the table. Mm-hmm. You just don't, especially as a professional. I did a song, pretty much as soon as I got home, mm-hmm. When that first happened to me. And the song is entitled "They Should Never Know." And the reason why it's titled that is because I felt like I was attacked in the hospital because of what they thought that I knew. And little did they know, I was actually learning from the process as well, because I had never gone through such a process as that one. So it was, it was horrifying, man, and it still is. When I look at my daughter every day, it's like, really? Because of what? Because I asked for a transfer? Mm-hmm. So kind of that's when everything happened. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the song "They Should Never Know," that song is a song that's dear to my heart, and that's why I just had to expose our whole situation in code. So those that could tune in would get it. Mm-hmm.
Well, James, actually, we're kind of out of time during this particular segment. I mean, I don't want to go too deep because I didn't bring you here to really get into your music background, your music career. Maybe we can save that for another show. Sound like you're a talented musician, and it will be interesting to hear a little bit more about your music background. But I appreciate you being a replacement under short notice, and I have to give tremendous credit for our previous guest towards this referral. So if there's any last things you want to say quickly before we end this segment, feel free to do so.
Just listen to the song, and it drops some gems in there for what could possibly happen in a hospital.
Okay.
When we would hope not.
Right.
Yeah.
Words well taken.
So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you too, James. I appreciate that.
Well, God bless you, and Godspeed, and I be praying for a successful outcome, and my heart goes out to you and your family, and with the grace of God be with your daughter, and you hang in there, brother. Hang in there.
All right. We are through with this segment.
All right. Right.
Okay.
All right, my friends, stick and stay. We will be right back. Morning Talk. Your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with Jonathan Small. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future. making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their cause. You are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now more than ever, you need to make your vote count. It's time to clear the air and vote for a mayor that is unbought, unbossed, trusted, and accountable to you, the constituent. My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I am an independent thinker, and I approve this message. I'm asking you for your vote for mayor of the city of Hartford. For more information, visit McCauleyformayor.com. Have the courage to vote your conscience and vote for the name you trust and know. Vote J. Stan McCauley for mayor.
Hi,
My name's J. Stan McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Oh, yeah. Okay, welcome back. Jay Hogart in the background. jhogart.com. Check out his many great jazz albums that he has. Let's continue.
Yeah.
Jonathan Small.
Well, this was a challenge to some degree with the last interview. I mean, I had a guest plan up until yesterday. I was really excited, looking forward to interviewing a returning guest, but he hasn't been on in a while, and then just a health issue or something came up where he was not available. So mentally, you're preparing yourself for one guest, one type of topic you're really interested in, and then you got to readjust. So I could have just said, okay, let's just forget about it. I'll come on and I'll be the guest or just the co-host. But I said it's within me to always try to have a guest. I don't
Jonathan
feel
always
comfortable.
has it. I don't think you've ever, maybe only once show.
Yes, when we first,
and that was because
I think we were just getting started with this format.
the guests had an
That's
issue.
right.
It was two of them.
Two of them. Yeah.
Two of them. One came and it was all bent out of shape and offended, and then he didn't want to come in the house.
Right.
And the other person had issues with shoes.
But I'm thinking talking about for Morning Talk Live. I had a guest a couple times, did not come through with the Zoom.
Well, that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've tried to keep the track record going.
But I mean, in all your years of broadcast, you're the longest producer
Yeah.
at Access TV.
All right. I appreciate that.
.org.
Take
And
that.
the longest.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a fun, fulfilling moment to come here every single week and be part of the network, and I don't take that lightly. You've offered a tremendous amount of opportunity that I wouldn't be presented with, and there's just some big challenges that's out here in our society. Just to change the subject a little bit, Matt. Just to change the subject a little bit. I've talked to my family and friends up in Boston, and they're saying, because I keep them abreast of what's going on here locally too in Hartford, and they're telling me that they think Hartford is more dangerous than Boston. And I don't know the whole ins and outs, because I always was under the impression that the Roxbury section and the Dorchester section was more dangerous than the north end and the south end of Hartford. But they're telling me what they're hearing going on down here in this small city, they think it's more dangerous than Boston.
It would seem as such, and you consider how small Hartford is.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking
Hartford
at.
ain't Hartford's not as big as Boston or Philadelphia or Los Angeles or Chicago, but when you consider the amount of deaths by violence for a city our size, it's quite disturbing.
Well, 3 and 2 hours over the weekend, just like that. And then you're dealing with multiple 3 shooters involving the incident on Sterling Street, and just the reckless behavior. There
were 3 shooters?
3 different shooters attacking the people that was on the porch.
Jeez.
And that was horrific. I mean, and I think one of the people...
That's an ambush.
That's what they said. It was an ambush style. This was not just something that's a setup. They knew where they were going to be at, and they had it timed. And, so many young lives in particular. I mean, any life is precious, but, young people in their 20s, there's one of these guys just was recently released from prison, and, just like that, it's destroying the whole family to some degree, the community. It's giving the image of a black guy, well, this is all that goes on, and that's not the case. There's a lot of good things that happen. It's just that these things are so horrific, and the media is going to be on top of it constantly. Mayor Luke Bronin made a statement with this Chan Williams Bay Jr. saying he was involved in a murder a couple years ago, and he shouldn't have been out on the streets. So I think it is a judicial issue. It's a combination of many different factors. Certainly people out there with guns shouldn't be out there. But I guess the criminal is going to find a gun anyway. So your criminal is not going to say, well, it's against the law for me to carry a gun. I'm going to abide by the law. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And that's why they're criminals.
Yeah. But it's just a real scary feeling. If you're ever victimized by this, and then unfortunately sometimes innocent people get caught up into this trap as well, have nothing to really do with it, and then they're pulled into this, and it's a big mayoral election, and I think at some point, if it hasn't already been put on with public safety, what are yourself or other candidates are going to, I guess you have your pinpoint plan, but, how are you going to deal with this type of public safety if you or anybody else becomes the new mayor? I mean, is this a challenge, a major problem? Or
it's a very major problem. The current administrator, the current mayor, ran on this very subject. He called Hartford the murder capital of New England, and talked about how dangerous the city is. I have been of the mindset that violence is an outbreak. It's a public health issue. The violence is the outbreak. Like chickenpox, you see you get the chickenpox all over you. That's an outbreak of of something that the person has. And so violence not necessarily being a quote unquote disease, it is a disease of the society. And when you start seeing violence happening, then you have to go to the root cause of that violence and address it there. Other than that, you're medicating the symptom. So we have a tendency, in my opinion, to medicate the symptoms of violence, and that is manifest in gunshots, folks being stabbed, raped, robbed, and pillaged, and those personal attacks on other human beings because of an inability to resolve conflict. And so what is the cause of that conflict? We spend hundreds of millions of dollars in Hartford over the years to police and do attack the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
But we spend very little money on addressing the cause. We know that one of the causes is poverty.
Yeah.
So what are we doing about poverty? Are we trying to eradicate, eliminate, minimize poverty, attack it aggressively for an outcome that eliminates it? One of my favorite terms I use all the time is path to impact. And so what are we trying to impact by our actions? What are we trying to accomplish? Are we trying to, and until that goal is accomplished, we haven't completed the mission. And a lot of people are getting paid along the way, but the impact isn't happening. There's still crime. It's still happening at an alarming rate. Innocent people are being pulled in, and
Well, I got to be honest. I mean, I sent the email, and I might even sent it to you. I sent it to Speaker Matt Ritt. I told him the situation. I don't feel safe. I was just trying to draw a sense of urgency. I didn't get a response because I don't know if this is the department or area that he even handles, to be honest. As a state legislator and the Speaker of the House, I was considering addressing a response. I've reached out to U.S. Senator Chris Murphy in the past for a guest appearance. His scheduling just was not available at this time of the morning and this particular day. And then I remember the meeting that U.S. Senator Murphy had with Reverend Henry Brown a couple of years ago up on Unity Plaza in that particular section of the city. And every now and then I would just try to remind myself and a few other people what has really come out of that meeting. What was the follow-up? What was the true attention? I mean, the Mothers United Against Violence had got a tremendous amount of support from Congressman John Larson, and that's very good. But and maybe, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Reverend Henry Brown and their organization. Maybe they'll decided to work more with Congressman John Larson than U.S. Senator Chris Murphy.
Well, once again, what's the path to impact?
Mm-hmm.
What is the path to impact? What outcome are you trying to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
The success is relative to, on whether or not that outcome.
Well, if you're trying to get funding and resources, you've been able to get some of your goals. I'm only going by this as an outsider. Congressman Larson was instrumental in getting some funding for the Mothers United Against Violence organization. The conditions in the areas of gun violence that they are part of still exists today. So that hasn't really been resolved, but they've been very helpful towards the family members that has been victimized through homicides and gun violence. So that's a form of a solution. I think what Reverend Brown was trying to work with U.S. Senator Chris Murphy was the whole big picture, getting the neighborhoods much more empowered, developed, dealing with the criminal elements, dealing with better opportunities, expanding more resources and attention, particularly because Chris Murphy is always gun legislation, gun reforms, when you have mass shootings. And then Reverend Brown was trying to instill to U.S. Senator Murphy that, okay, that's fine and dandy, but you have a lot of daily shootings going on in your own backyard. So I don't know if anything has come out of that meeting, to be honest, Stan, over the past 2 years. But I'm the man that believe you have to work with who's working with you. So, and again, I don't know even what Congressman Larson, the big picture, has violence and crime and poverty been eradicated? The answer is no. So, I like my organization to get funded. I think that's important. I like to go to Washington, D.C.
Well, none of those things are. If children can't read,
Right.
and we want to get them help,
Yeah.
so the path to impact is the path that leads to them being able to read. Until they can read, there's been no impact. Now, if you say, well, we need to give teachers a raise,
Yeah.
then they'll be better engaged. Well, the path to impact seems very narrow. It seems very short. The first person on the path to impact is the teacher.
Right.
Because they got a raise. They can buy a new car. They can put more better food on the table for their family, their kids. But still, Johnny and Shaniqua can't read. And that's what I mean by path to impact. So what is the path? I mean, what is the impact that what are we trying to impact by this course of action?
Yeah.
Less homicides. We want to see a dramatic drop in homicides. 25%, 50%, 75%. What is that number? That number is not stated. So a whole lot of things can happen, but if you're not achieving the stated goal, then we are failing. We must do something different. But that is never really a stated goal, in my opinion, and if it is, it ain't working.
Well,
So what do you do to make this work?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I understand what you're saying, Stan, about knowing how to read or write. I think here's the other side of the coin, though. When you've been victimized by crime and a loved one has been killed, you're not really concerned what the illiteracy rate exists in the city, at that particular moment.
Well, I only use that as an example of path to impact, not to imply that we need to focus on reading, but that there's a path to the impact. So, Mothers United Against Violence, who I love dearly, their organization's mission and all of that is not to change the conditions of the neighborhood through better housing, this, that, and the third. So while all the things you said, that you think that that's what the money is going to be, some of the purposes of Murphy and Larson.
Well, I will say I thought the meeting that he had up in Unity Plaza could have been designed to deal with some of those other factors of getting people more job readiness, reading and writing, dealing with issues, underlining issues. I've never really been able to speak to Reverend Brown directly to find out.
Right. So how do they plan to achieve that goal? See, and that, to me, that's what always there's a lofty desire to do a thing, but there's no active plan to get one there. So how do you get there from here?
Well, it's the old saying, you can't be all to all people. Maybe the Mothers United Against Violence is designed to do what they do. And then other people and other organizations deal with other areas that is needed. So if their mission is to confront, because that's a heavy load, believe it or not.
Very heavy.
So, I mean, you're taking on other burdens now of talking about job opportunities, business opportunities, trying to figure out, who's being released from prison, who shouldn't be out on the streets. They have to deal with retaliations. After a while, you deal with one family member. They don't know if the other family member is going to come back at that family member. So I think their mission, if you center it around violence and homicides and dealing with the family members towards counseling and other forms of resources. Sometimes they don't have any borough insurance, hospitalization costs. that funding hopefully is going towards those areas, and I think they've been very helpful in those areas. But when you're talking about poverty and high illiteracy rates, and that's needed, don't get me wrong. I think you got to know how to read or write. Getting yourself in the proper frame of mind. There got to be other sources. Like somebody coming to AccessTV.org network saying, well, maybe y'all should be involved in healthcare. That you are a media outlet. You deal with covering media formats. Get involved in showing the health disparities that exist. Taking you out of your box a little bit.
Well, I think a lot of times people want a particular thing to be. So they project or hope that certain agencies and entities will provide and deliver that.
Right.
Sometimes those desires are unreasonable, if you will, because that's not what that agency or entity does.
Right. Well, even the Greater Hartford African American Alliance, if somebody come to you and say, well, your organization needs to reduce poverty in 50%. That's a big goal. That's a tremendous.
That's not what we do.
That's what I'm saying. You can't be all something that you're not designed
right.
to.
And I would say we don't do that. In fact, people have come to the alliance for certain things, and we tell them that's not what we do. We don't do that.
But I think at best, if you don't do it, refer them
if
to
you
somebody
know who
that
to refer them to.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is no referral because we don't know.
We don't know, yeah.
The expectation that we're supposed to know all things is an unreasonable expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't compound that by then trying to be what you're not to the person who's really looking for help.
Yeah.
If they can't get the help from you, then they will automatically go somewhere else because they need the help.
Mm-hmm.
They're not negatively impacted by leaving with what they came with.
Right.
But you can negatively impact somebody if they come to you with an issue or problem, and you capture them and give them a false expectation that there's going to be a reasonable delivery of what they want when you can't do it.
Well, and I know that the Greater Hartford African American Alliance, through people like Bridget Prince and attorney Cynthia Jennings, they've been very instrumental in addressing not just the MDC water and sewage
But
flooding.
that's something that we could do.
You can do. So if somebody come to you saying, well, we got issues with flooding or raw sewage, then exactly.
And the path to impact was very, very clear. Or the impact was clear. Then we set out on a course, a path to get there. The impact is to mitigate raw sewage backing up into people's houses. That's the goal.
Right.
Everything else is a benefit or a roadblock. But the goal is to get sewage from being in people's houses. And there was a means by which to make that happen. Now, whether or not it happens is another issue. It needs oversight. It needs to be, people's feet need to be held to the fire. All those kinds of things. But the stated goal was achieved. Now, we move to the next step. What is the path that's going to deliver less murders in Hartford?
Yeah.
ShotSpotter is part of that. Having active, qualified, and trained detectives and investigators is part of that. The judicial system is part of that. If the judicial system is breaking down and failing and putting the very people who are causing all this mayhem and harm back out on the streets, then it would seem clear that we need to design a strategy that puts the pressure back on the judicial system to do its job. Now, you may have people talking about second chances. Oh, we want to give people second chance. But there's a reasonable expectation that if you sit in a courtroom with your peers casting judgment over wrong that you are accused of and you are found guilty, that the society is saying that you need to be separated from the rest of us because you act like a criminal, out of control human being who brings harm to other folk.
Right.
Now, we're sensitive to the fact that your family don't want you in jail.
Yeah.
But you out there doing mayhem. So we don't let you out to the rest of the community because your loved ones want you to be free. Then you go and act reckless and crazy again.
Right.
Okay, so the problem isn't retaining reckless, crazy people. The problem is that when innocent people get locked up because of malfunctioning system, if you fix what's wrong, we have systems that are not working the way they should. So you fix the system. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You change the water.
Right.
All right. What we have is chaos in the streets. We have a sense of lawlessness in the land, a sense of lawlessness here in Hartford, and it is going unchecked. So something has to be done more than rhetoric and talk. There needs to be a plan. And if there is a plan, that plan should be shared with the constituents of Hartford. This is not rocket science.
Well, I wonder, again, you're running for mayor, other candidates are running for mayor. Hopefully crime won't be, well, it needs to be addressed, but hopefully it's not going to be like a political scapegoat to just make a candidate look good. Like you said, the previous mayor, Bronin, ran on crime and public safety. Okay, we got to but this case, he's not running for re-election, so it's all a new slate.
Well, I get where you're going with this, and I think you're absolutely right. Ask the candidates, what is your plan to address the issues around public safety in the city of Hartford? Either they got a plan or they don't.
Right. Well, one thing you can't say is, well, I guess you can say some of them might have a proven track record, but not as mayor, though. You might can say some things you've worked on, work with other different people and other different organizations, but you've not been mayor.
A proven track record says what you have accomplished in the past. It hasn't, and it's while it is relevant to what you are likely to do in the future, because you did something in the past. An investor's proven track record is no guarantee that future investments are going to be profitable.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about what you did in the past. What is your plan to fix what's happening right now? What is your plan? Do you have a plan? Yes or no? If you have a plan, tell me how we get from here to there. Tell me how you get there. If you don't know, that's a legitimate answer. The BS to pretend you know when you don't know, that's unacceptable.
Right. Well, again, I mean, your plan would be a long, in-depth plan to really discuss over the air. I mean, it's kind of, or is it a simple? I mean, I guess you got some things you could share possibly, but really you might want to just save it for when the question is really asked to you at a public forum. I don't want to really make it unfair to put you now. But I will say one thing. I remember it's a long time ago, you thought that bringing a major job company would be a way to reduce crime. If
that's one component of
one component,
because the job, an opportunity for people to be employed, helps to attack the issues around poverty.
Yes,
which drives the underground economy and drug trade, which is a lot at the heart of the problem between drug trade and interpersonal relationships.
That's a big bulk of the problem.
That's the big bulk of the problem, and an inability to retain people who've done wrong in jail and then being released into the community.
Yeah,
it's a problem, and to me, it's something that you can pretty much know what those outcomes are. All right, Stick and Stay. We'll be right back. Short break. Morning Talk.
Hartford is run by the Democrat Party. It's a single-party town. And it would make no difference if it was a two-party town or if it was run by Republicans. All right? Anytime an organization runs a thing, the organization that manages or runs it wants to remain in power. When a political party runs the responsibility of governing your city, they're more concerned about remaining in power than they are concerned about providing needs for you, the constituent. It's your government, not the party's government. That's my only issue with the party. I'm a Democrat, all right? But I will never be embraced and accepted by the Democrat Party in theory because I'm not towing the party line. You understand what I'm saying? So the party needs someone to run for mayor. The mayor is an instrument, and he is a component of the machine that is city government. But he's less accountable to you and more accountable to the party, and the party has an apparatus by which to hold him accountable. The town committee, all right? And then the chairman of the party for the local municipality, and then the chairman of the state, and then and on and on and on, and the president and all that other stuff. And so the state committees, all right? So they want to vet you. So you run for some local office first and see if you can be trusted, this, that, and the third. Can you be trusted to lie, cheat, steal, put out lies, take in cash? Can you be trusted to do that? If you can't, then we can bring you in. All right? But we always got to hold you at bay because the power is tight. The power is like an aphrodisiac. People like it. It's worse than cocaine. Right? They want the power. And once they get a taste of the power, they want to hold on to the power because the power is literally to give projects up or down. That's it. All right? But the power is not meant for that. The power is there to manage the system on behalf of you all, the residents. Okay? But when you as a constituent are not satisfied because there's people being murdered and it doesn't seem like anyone's giving it any attention, and you feel that your investigative agencies like the police department should be looking into these things, you then become a thorn in the side of the people who are supposed to be doing stuff. All right? Or you have a community review, like a civilian review board. And the civilian review board flags particular incidents that happen by police officers. But those incidents might be a liability to the city. So the city is crushing those things from going any further because if they do so, in theory, they will expose themselves to a liability and they can be sued for millions of dollars. So they never sees the light of day. So you, the constituent, who's supposed to be in charge of all of this, are kept in the dark. There's no transparency because they don't want you to know what's going on with your government because it is a threat to their power. So if you want any of that to change, you need to elect somebody who you can hold accountable, as opposed to the party installing someone who is beholden and accountable to them. This is not rocket science. Very simple. Very, very simple. Very simple. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't have the capacity to hold accountable your elected official. They want you to think that way because then you accept the fact that you don't have accountability over it. But you didn't put them there. The party put them there. Understand? The party put them in office, not you. You think your votes put them there, but it didn't. It only takes 35 votes to get into the office of mayor. That's the town committee. If those 35 people come out and vote for them, they're in. They don't need you to come out. All right? And so you have the illusion of choice, the illusion of a modicum of control that you think you have, that you find that the rude awakening comes 3 weeks after they get in office. You get the old royal shaft. Because you didn't put them there. You understand? If you put them there, they would be beholden to you. If you put them there. As an elected representative of the people, you are beholden to the people, not the party. And that's why Hartford is in the shape it's in. Because your elected officials are beholden to the party.
Hi,
My name's J. State McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right. It's Morning Talk. Welcome back. Jonathan Small is here this morning, along with myself, and you all out there. Welcome. Jumping back into our conversation post-guest conversation.
Well, again, I know it might be unfair for me to ask you this question. I can give you an answer. I don't really have a real answer, but I don't know. Should the mother of the 2-year-old boy be charged with manslaughter? I guess it's under her custody as a parent, but that's what Pastor Sam Saylor was out there addressing this issue. It's a real touchy subject matter. Gets into a lot of areas.
Yeah, I don't know what she should be charged with. I do believe she should not be demonized. She's not the enemy by any stretch of the imagination. This is one of the most tragic things that could possibly happen.
But see, at first it seemed like she was just an unfit parent. That the house was...
That's because they can... We don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People jump to conclusions because of the report. Now, she has how many kids? 5 kids?
5 kids. 2 to 12.
Right, and she's doing Uber runs?
That's what I heard too.
The Uber runs means they need money.
Right.
Because they don't have resource. So, I have 2 kids. And, you know, their rooms are pretty good to go. But I can imagine if I had 5 kids. Because their room, when they was, both of them, they each have their own room now. But they were both in the same room. It looked like a hurricane went through there. Always. Yeah. So I'm saying if you have 5 kids, everybody in the household's working. You have some of the kids that are old enough to watch other kids. And, you know, I don't find it at all odd that the house would be a nightmare in terms of, and then you clean it up.
Well, from the way that the report was described, though, it's one thing to have your rooms in a mess. It's another thing to have what they was reported about food, feces, and other things. So it's a little, I don't know if it's quite the same. I mean, if you really look at the picture of a household, I walk into a household, I see a room, it's clothes scattered all over the place.
Right, they're grown folk with houses aren't neat and tidy.
Yeah. But again, if DCF went there,
apparently, I don't know.
You don't know enough.
I don't know. That's why they have
saying.
These things, investigations, and ideally they don't take place in the court of public opinion, where people become demonized because of conversations that go back and forth. And I've not been to the house.
Right.
DCF has been to the house, and they apparently saw fit to. The things weren't so disruptive that they just shut it down.
Shut it down, yeah, because you would just shut it down and take it.
DCF has been known to come in your house and find a ham sandwich not at the right temperature and shut everything down, take your kids.
Right.
So either they really, really, really fell through the cracks, or maybe there was some leeway given because of certain situations. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. That's not true. Someone knows, but most of the general public doesn't know. We only know what's being reported. So we have to wait and see. I do not believe that this woman should be demonized and turned into a horrible human being. She lost her child.
Well, that's the way it came across in the beginning. What kind of parent is this, you know? Because I think the report just indicated she wasn't in the home. She left the children by themselves to fend for themselves. And the house was in total chaos and disorder. So that doesn't make you look on that report as a good, responsible parent. But now we hear she was working, doing Uber delivery driving. The baby father, I believe, was on the way to the home, but he didn't arrive in time. I don't know if that's illegal.
I don't know. I would imagine the baby's father has been on his way to the home in the past.
Yes.
It was an unfortunate accident. There's a very famous, well-known businessman who has a supermarket whose son drowned because the other parent thought that the other parent was watching the child, and he drowned.
Right.
Were they accused of being unfair parents? Was their home clean? None of that has to do with the tragedy.
Well, they charge with manslaughter, though. She's going to be charged with manslaughter.
Right. So, should she be charged with manslaughter? I don't know.
Right.
She, this was a tragedy. She could have been home.
And it could have happened.
And the kid could have been upstairs bouncing. He was bouncing on the bed. What it seems, he was just jumping on the bed and fell out the window.
Right.
The bed was probably next to the window. It had to be open. Maybe it was hot out, so they opened the window. He was downstairs. He goes upstairs, bounces on the bed. Next thing you know, he's outside.
Right.
Do you hold the landlord accountable because there weren't bars on the window?
I was thinking about that actually.
So,
should have been bar. I mean, that's what I'm thinking too about the bigger picture. Right. I got to put safety at the first. I mean, I know people may not
we're
feel
looking
good
at this. We're looking at this with 20/20 hindsight. Everyone's got perfect vision.
Yeah.
When they look back into the past as to what should have been done.
Right.
But I always challenge people to take that 20/20 vision and apply it to next week, because something's gonna happen next week. We don't know what, where, or when, but no one can tell you what's gonna happen next week. But 2 weeks from now, they'll have perfect vision on what should have been done.
Well, I can say no secret. There's a lot of homes and families, unfortunately, that's in total disorder. It's just nothing drastic hasn't always come about that it needs to be reported to the media. You may have a home where there's a loaded gun inside the home. It shouldn't be there. Somebody left a loaded gun. A child picks up the gun, ends up shooting someone or shooting himself. See, sometimes, I bring this up every now and then, and we all got our issues, and it's not fair to put your dirty laundry out as a whole to the community, because individually, I don't think anybody wants their dirty laundry put out in the public. That's why when Thurman Milner was talking about 20 years ago, the so-called master plan, and the issues he was saying was just too much to just pinpoint on one particular area. So there's a combination of different factors that people all got to look at. And the dirty laundry syndrome, if you get into it, it can make people feel uncomfortable. If I say your son is a hardened criminal, I'm just saying in general, your son shouldn't be out there on the street.
Hardened criminals shouldn't be out on the street.
Right, because he's a hardened.
Right. So I mean, if you're trying to keep it from descending into folk being hurt feelings, then it doesn't have to be your daughter or your son. It's just hardened criminals.
A hardened criminal, right?
Right. If it happens that one son or daughter's a hardened criminal, then they fall into that. They fall into that.
But
category.
many times that's what adult parents, and sometimes they don't want to confront. Oh, my child didn't do that. He ain't as bad as what y'all make him out to be.
No, your son is a stone cold criminal.
Right.
Period.
And then when I think all parents admit this, see, sometimes you don't want to admit shame and guilt because it might become back to be a reflection on you. It's not to say that you are a horrible person or you're a horrible parent. You didn't do a good job. Your son just turned out to be a hardened criminal, and he shouldn't be out on the streets. He needs to be locked up in jail.
But I mean, John, I don't see where that is necessarily.
We're trying
a hard discussion to have.
No, we're as a society, I think we're trying to cover up a lot of our ills to some degree.
Well, that would mean that everyone is living in a constant state of denial because they don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings.
Yeah.
I mean, the society. If you're talking about how we deal with people who are breaking the law, and should there be a consequence for that, I think that's a worthwhile discussion. That's why we have legislatures. That's why we have people in communities, and we have community groups, and people discuss these things, and they go up to the legislature and they pass laws, and then they enact those laws. The laws don't just drop out of thin air. Someone is advocating. People speak on these things. So people have to be engaged, and they have to be they have to be participants in the governance of their society.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going in two different directions, but I'm not a person that want to beat down on somebody. I can relate to what it's like to feel like you're at the bottom and you got no answers, and you're compounded with a lot of problems that you can't resolve. and you're trying to seek help and you're still not getting resolved to the whereabouts that you would like it to be resolved.
I think these are all different avenues.
Yeah.
On the or different off ramps on the same highway.
Right.
They're not connected. They're just they're off ramps. So if you want to talk about clean house, that's a separate subject.
A separate subject, yeah.
From, is there food? Do one have to work?
Right.
All right. Is there an accident going to happen?
Yeah.
Now, you don't take all of those things and make it related to the accident. Unless in the investigation we find out that it actually is. But these things need to be determined through a process. And you don't demonize individuals. That's why in this country, in theory, you are innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
We have come to a place in our society where the allegation, the charge is tantamount to guilt. And now you must establish and prove your innocence. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You're innocent until proven guilty. The presumption is that you are not guilty. Let us do an investigation. And then you have trial by public mob. You know, the mob determines based upon who knows what. Folk don't know nothing.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Well, you know, I mean, I don't want to mix apples and oranges, and I just think somebody told me this a while ago that some people have the tolerance to accept things where other people don't. Some people can sleep outside on a bench and let the whole world see them, and other people can't. Some people could end up sleeping on somebody's couch and having all types of elements of no privacy and all people watching your business. See, and again, you don't want to beat down on people because you don't know where they at that particular time. You know, the whereabouts to be able to pull yourself out of a predicament. I mean, you can't compare an inner city like Hartford to West Hartford, where it's unlikely you're going to go out in Blueback Square and see people sleeping on benches at all hours of night, because it's a total different city and a total different town. You might find people begging for money here and there, but you know, when it starts to feel like it's becoming the norm now, to see people in the cities, even in the state capital, Bushnell Park, and it's gonna be spreading to some degree. More people are congested, you know, with nothing to do, no productivity, no outlook for a better future. And it seems like people in our legislative, people in general, really just don't have any answers to this problem. You can go to the people and say, what do you need? What can I do to help? I need money. Well, you give the person money, the money going to get spent. I mean, I'm starting to change my giving money habits. You know, I mean, I don't mind giving you money if it's going to help you but I don't want you to be dependent on me giving you money just to be giving you money. I mean, you can't tell me every time you need $20, $50.
They can tell you that as many times as you're willing to give them money.
Yeah.
As long as you're willing to give them money, they'll be there with a hand out.
Right.
It's you have to say no.
No.
Not them need to change their lives so they don't come to you. Just tell them no.
And then they'll either go to somebody else or they'll figure out, I got to make my own money.
Right.
But I like the approach, though, that you want to help people where they can help themselves. You know, I'm not going to give you money, but that's what my father told me a long time ago. I didn't learn it young enough to really develop it when I should have. I'm not going to give you money so you need a car. I'll help you get money so you can buy yourself a car. Right. You know, it might take a little longer. You might not get the car that you really want, but you're going to get something at least that you'll be able to get back and forth. So you want me to give you $5,000 where you can buy a car at 18 years old? No, you got to work, catch the bus a little bit, you know, save your money, get yourself a car is what I did. I didn't get the car that I really wanted. But I think when you can help people get to where they need to be at, you know, up front, accesstv.org network is not in to make business. It's not in to sell advertisement dollars. You know, I tried to pitch the idea to a few people, to a few sources. Either they tell me up front, no, I'll think about it. And then I don't hear back from you. You don't want to do it. So it's not realistic that I can convince you to turn this network into a way, because that's not what you're looking to do.
No, not unless you come up here with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to invest in that.
Right. I got to do
So,
my.
I'm doing what I'm going to do.
You're doing what you're going to do. Right. Now, do we need businesses?
Yes, there's need for business. There's businesses all over the region.
Yeah.
Some of them will prosper. Others will go out of business.
Right.
The need for business doesn't make it pressing upon, someone else to go start a business because someone else needs one.
Right.
The person that thinks there's a need needs to be the entrepreneur to actually go out and do it.
Right.
But
we have to ask ourselves, if we're going to talk seriously about eradicating and reducing poverty, how are we going to do it?
There are ways to reduce poverty. There are absolutely ways to reduce poverty.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest hindrance in reduction of poverty is the amount of money that poverty generates.
Okay.
As long as there's more people making money off of poverty,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
there will be poverty.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But there's ways to reduce poverty.
Right.
But most people don't. That's not what most people want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where sometimes our Democrats get criticized and blamed for it. You're doing the same old structural, systematic way of policies to keep a dependent class in one category, and it's beneficial to you towards your voting bloc. You're giving the people what they want or what they feel they want and need, and in return, they're giving you their vote. Now, you don't have a Republican Party base really in Hartford, and you don't have a large numbers overall in Connecticut. It's really it's a blue states technically, but the Democratic philosophy gets criticized sometime by the right, is that you're keeping a dependent class of people and you are using them too.
Well, you got a lot of poor folk in the hills of Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of Republicans, states and cities where there's poverty.
Right. Okay.
So that
argument.
That argument goes back and forth every political season from the opposite ends of both parties about the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a distraction because the party is not the government.
Mm-hmm.
People are the government. The party just happens to be the entity that is managing the people's government.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever's going on in whatever party, at the end of the day, everyone has a government they deserve because they put them there.
Mm-hmm.
You vote for these people. They don't get in there on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some gaming of the system that always goes on, but if the people are engaged and really want change, then they will do what they need to do to make that change happen.
Mm-hmm. And don't worry about the particular political party.
No, I'm less concerned about party than I am about outcome. What's outcome you're trying to get?
Well, you see, you have to vote for somebody or something.
Actually, you don't have to vote for somebody. So I give you a bowl of dog poo and cat poo. Right. So now you got to choose.
Right.
Which one do you want? Well, I don't want either. No.
Mm-hmm.
You got to choose.
Right.
I mean, you have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which one tastes worse? I'm not eating that. No. You have to.
Yeah.
No, I don't have to. That's part of the problem. All right. So if people really, what you want is a nice, succulent turkey dinner. So find someone who's going to create that succulent turkey dinner and vote for them.
Yeah, but the thing here is what you got to look at with the Democrats. And it's real important, that you have food to eat. So if you have a tremendous social service structure and you're providing Medicaid, food stamps, housing, Section 8 vouchers. These are things that affect your everyday life.
Yeah, but that's not just Democrats.
Yeah, but in Connecticut, where the Democrats are the ones that's the governor, they're the ones that's in the state legislative.
Yeah, but these systems are in place to protect people, Jonathan.
Right.
And so it's neither Democrat or Republican. If Republicans take over the legislature and the executive branch, those things will still be in place.
Well, you remember former Governor Rowland had the 21-month time limit for welfare.
Right. Do we still have a 21-month time limit for welfare?
I don't know. I think some people have been cut off. I think there's been a lot of restrictions now.
Things change.
Okay.
Right. So we have a Democrat in the governor's mansion. Mm-hmm. Democrats are in control of the legislature.
Yes.
So where's the free flowing of all of this stuff that you're talking about?
Well, it's there. I mean, you go to a grocery store on the 3rd, you're going to see a lot of people. I know people who do get your Social Security, so you can't, and you work for that. So.
Right. There's nothing wrong with a system that protects those who are vulnerable.
Who need it, right.
The alternative is they go hungry.
Well, investment basic income. Is that what they call it? Is it investment? Income,
minimum basic income.
No, that's not it. It's income. It's well, we talked about it.
I know
before.
what you're saying.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. But that's not in place right now. And should it be? That's another discussion for another day. But
that's not the answer. Then you don't think that's the answer?
I don't know if it's the answer.
Give people enough money. Well, the money is still coming from
minimum basic income.
Minimum basic income. Yeah.
Right.
So give people $2,000 a month. Let them buy their own food.
Right, until they spend it on drugs.
So that's not.
And fall between the cracks.
Right. So you rather have it do if you have your choice.
No, I'm saying that these panacea ideas as a grand fix require everyone that's in receipt of said monies to be on the same page, and people aren't.
Okay.
All right. You can't micromanage other folk heads, but you can put a burden of responsibility on those people to be the governor of their own lives. And those that don't have the capacity to do that need the help of the broader society. So how does that society kick in and help them as best that it can, knowing there are limitations and not trying to make them into dependents? This requires all hands on deck from the society. Otherwise, people will game the system and they'll find ways to take the path of least resistance.
Right.
If they're handing out $2,000 a month, they ain't got to do nothing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll just take the $2,000. I can live with that.
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to remove Section 8 housing vouchers. You're going to remove food stamps assistance. You just buy your own. You pay your own rent from now on. There's no Section 8 housing vouchers that's going to pay you.
You're just shifting how people get access to the resource.
Okay.
That's all.
But it's not like you don't think people are going to look at it the same as working for $2,000 a month. That would change how you value the money more than if the government just gives you $2,000 a month.
Everybody that works for a living knows what it is to work for your money.
Right.
Now, if you don't do nothing and get money,
yeah, other than
that's not a job.
That's not a job. Okay. So the value of how you handle your money, you think, is different when you work for something more than when the government subsidize you that every month. That people might just squander the $2,000 and not pay their rent and thinking now the government should give me more. Where if you work for the money and that's the only alternative that you have.
Some people are going to do very fine by that, Jonathan. But we're not. No one is troubled by the people who are doing the best they can and are reasonable individuals and make the right decision.
Right.
They're not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem are the people who fall through the cracks because of social pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Those individuals are not playing by the same set of rules.
Okay.
There's all kinds of reasons as to why.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a touch.
I think it's a worthwhile discussion, and many people are having that discussion right now in high places where these decisions are made and where you have to deal with people. You have the emergence of AI putting lots of people out of work. You're going to have more and more people who are going to be falling victim to lack of resource. So what happens?
Yeah.
If a person is hungry and doesn't have what they need, they will take it from someone who has.
Right.
So if you got something I need to feed my family and I'm starving, when you go to sleep, I'm gonna come over and take a little bit of it.
Yeah.
And before long, you're gonna catch me. Then now you shoot me. Now my family member come and shoot you back. Your society will break down if there's not certain safeguards and safety nets.
Right.
And so your elected officials, your politicians, your community activists, all these people work in concert with one another to come up with all kinds of ways to help people through the day.
But see, I like the method, and I think it's a better method. You know, when I was going through the unemployment, collecting unemployment compensation, once you had to show proof that you were looking for a job, once I got the job, I was automatically removed from getting unemployment compensation. So the thing is, you get the assistance while you need the assistance.
Right.
But in the process, unless you got some health issues, some serious psychiatric issues, which is very relevant in our society, part of the agreement of we subsidizing you something is to get you back on your feet. When we can find the mechanisms, you know, to get you a job that gives you health coverage, you make enough that you can cover your budget for your food and your rent, you're off of the welfare system. Now you can move to the workforce. But
until you're out of work again.
Uh-huh.
And that's given everyone's playing with the same hand.
Yes.
Everybody's not dealt the same deck of cards.
I understand.
So, when someone does have a problem with mental health, when someone does have a problem with getting too old to work, when someone's house burns down or someone's basement is flooded with sewage and they can no longer live there, and when they were, you know, the week before that, everything was fine in their life. Now they got a $70,000 bill to pump out sewage.
Yeah.
Now they got to also pay for where they to dispose of the toxic waste. Folk have issues with families. Husband said something about the health care of the daughter. Wife gets upset because she wants to do it one way. Next thing you know, they're divorced families. I mean, all kinds of things happen to people. And those factors are never in play when people talk about this system to do this, that, and the third. That the system they design is designed around everybody doing their part.
Yeah.
Playing by all of the rules that are set up by these people in these high places and think tanks. Down on the street where life is lived, it ain't that simple.
Yeah.
And those individuals are very present and very real. So if you go down by Buckley High School where all the prostitutes hang out and they're tricking so that they could get a hit.
Yeah, it's a drug problem.
That's a drug problem. It's a social problem. Then you have the husbands that is stepping out on the wives, or the construction worker coming up off the thing and dip in there for a little lunch. Next thing you know, you're taking some disease home to the family. There's real life issues that impact the community.
Well, that's why I was saying earlier, when you're talking about illiteracy rate and then I'm dealing with a traumatic issue, even though it's relevant and
they're all relevant.
Right.
There's no one is more important than the other. You have to deal with all of the balls when you're juggling. If you're juggling 20 balls, they're all in the air. When it falls into your hand, you have to have a place to put that and make room for the next thing. If you can't juggle 600 balls, you need other jugglers to come and help you.
Yeah.
The system is designed to help as many people as possible without collapsing. And so we can focus in on one particular thing that's wrong and talk about how wrong that is. That's great. What's the solution? How do we want to impact that problem with a fix?
Well, minimum basic income is not the solution that you see right now. It may be the solution at some point in our society because of other factors, but it's not the solution now. It's not the way, it's not going to reduce poverty. You don't think minimum basic income will reduce? You give people enough money every month, that could put a dent in poverty. You don't see the connection on that level.
I don't know that it's as simple as that. I think that it's a worthwhile discussion.
Right.
And then we come to what that conclusion is. But you just give everybody $2,000. that's not as simple a solution as you may think. When you inject that much money into the system,
right,
other people say, wow, well, I got to raise my prices.
Yes.
So I could get a piece of that money.
Right.
Now you have inflation. The value of the money starts to drop. So what you could buy with $10 now costs $5.
Yes.
I mean, what you could buy with $5 now costs $10. So now the $2,000 they had really drops to $1,000 in buying power. Rent goes up.
Yes.
All kinds of other things. So these things need to be given fair consideration, but the answer is not that simple. Doesn't mean there isn't an answer. I just don't think we come to it on our program.
Well, be aware of one last thing. At a debate or some forum, you may be asked that question.
I'm prepared to answer any question that anyone wants to ask in whatever detail they would like to know.
Yeah, you don't duck anything.
I don't duck questions. I love questions, and I have answers. They may not be what people want to hear, or they may be wrong.
Right.
But I have answers, and I have a thing, a path to get to the problem, the fix. Let's design a fix.
Yeah.
And get it fixed. And the hurdles that come in between that fix, we do. A lot of people don't want to do that because they're not trying to fix things. They're trying to be politically correct.
Correct, yeah.
Because they're politicians, not elected officials. Their finger is always in the wind trying to figure out what answer is the right answer.
Yes.
They're more concerned about the right answer or the answer people want to hear than fixing the problem.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I think at some point, you're going to be given some tough questions. And
I would love tough questions. I will participate in any forum that anyone wants me to participate in. Unfortunately, I think that most of the forums upcoming, I will not be invited to because I'm not trying to get the Democratic nomination anymore.
Yeah. Keep an eye on Mike McCauley running for mayor, too.
I know Mike. I know Mike real well.
He's not going to win, obviously.
He's going to have all kinds of great topic matters, but Mike's not going to be in those discussions either.
Right.
Because he's a Republican.
Yeah,
so they'll have a couple of debates and forums in the general election, but the heavy hitter forums will be between now and the end of the primary, and the only people that they will allow in those forums are the people who are going to be that are going to be running for the Democratic Party nomination.
Well, Mike stated that all of the candidates, and I guess yourself included, unfortunately, there's some important issues that's being missed out.
That's not the candidate's problem. It's not the candidate that's doing that. And I've had this discussion with many people and many constituents.
Right.
The questions.
Yeah.
If you want answers, then ask the right question. Don't ask a question about, what do you think about downtown transportation and the eventuality of a subway system? That has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
We're not going to have a subway system. Why are we talking about that?
Right.
So the questions people are asking are important to them, but they're not the deep questions. Have a debate. There's a couple people would like to have a debate. No one wants to have a debate.
Yeah,
organizers don't want to have debates because they're scared that it might devolve into people shouting at each other or getting passionate about the issues. So they have these lightweight forums where you have crackers and water and a water crescent, and you talk about stuff that doesn't matter.
Well, that forum that took place a week or so ago, and I wasn't there, unfortunately, but that was a real serious forum where many of the residents were really confronting to the candidates.
But because the residents are upset because they're not being asked tough questions, so they're asking the questions from the floor.
From the floor, yeah.
That's what you do. If you want a question asked, and then the moderators and the people putting the forum on aren't asking them, yell it out from the floor. If you yell your question out from the floor, guess what? The candidates they'll answer your question.
Right.
All of us would love to go into a deep dive with questions, but we are bound by the rules of the person who's organizing the event. They're not our events.
Right.
We're invited to this person or this organization's event.
Do you have any similarities to Mike McCauley's policies that he advocates? Do you see any good things about what he advocates? What the mill rate needs to be reduced?
Oh, that's That's not Mike McGarry's issue. That's a fact.
A fact, yeah.
It has to be reduced. The only way to reduce the mill rate is to increase the grand list.
The grand list, and he mentioned that too.
Right. If you don't increase the grand list, the mill rate's not going to go up. Most constituents don't care about the grand list. Some do, but most don't. The grand list in their mind is something that's way off. They're concerned about this stuff on the ground.
The ground.
You know, I got a business and there's prostitution outside my business. What are you going to do about that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
That's where people are. So I think there's a time and a place for those kinds of debates and those kinds of questions. They're probably among some of the more business-minded individuals or other politicians. But the general public is not impacted by it. They don't believe they're impacted by it, even though they're absolutely impacted by it.
Well, it's going to be interesting as Mike gets some more vocal time for whatever it's worth. You know,
I hope Mike brings up all kinds of issues that we can all talk about and debate.
All right, let's see how things go. And again, I appreciate the interview segment this morning and being a co-host on your show. And let me work on finding someone for next week.
All right. Well, it's always good to have Jonathan on board. I love the post-guest discussion that we always have. So it's sort of like the after party.
Exactly. I look forward to it too. It's a good balance.
Yeah.
And everything.
Figure you may as well have this conversation on the air, because if we ended the show at the end of the guest, this would be going on for an hour after the show anyway. Right. So
have it over the air.
We have it over the air. Right. All right, my friends. It's time for us to get on out of here, Jonathan. Thank you. Good job, as always.
You're welcome.
All right. We'll see you next time, everybody. All right. Y'all have a fabulous rest of your day. Do something nice for your neighbors. Bye. Special thanks to our guests.